Hey, everybody.
We'll get started in just a second. Thanks for joining. All right. I'm excited about this one, guys. This is a topic that we probably have a conversation, I say 2, 3 times a week. So I'm very thrilled to have you folks joining us. So thank you. Welcome to our session on how to accelerate your migration with Ascend. We have a phenomenal group of characters here with us today. Fred Byron, Andrew Sweeney, Mike J. Really have a great group. My name is Trent Whitfield. I'm Chief of Engineering for the East of Technologent, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this session. Before we kick things off, I want to talk a little bit about the go-to-market that we're focusing on in 2025. It really surrounds these four main disciplines. When we're talking about data, it's getting the value out of your data, the most important element within your environment through data management conversations, data protection conversations, things of that nature. Artificial intelligence, this is definitely the way and the means that everyone is talking these days. So let's take that data. What else can we do with it from that side? How we can make your lives more efficient, easier, things of that nature. From a cloud perspective, we don't just talk about the hybrid cloud model, the private, the public. We're also talking about that modern infrastructure on-prem type of stuff. This is where we're going to focus today, by the way, a lot of those migration pieces we have from the Broadcom aspect. And then obviously security is a huge aspect where if we're talking about technology, people, processes, all those amazing things in that particular discipline. When we look at those four main pillars, we've actually developed these four practices here, right? For today's effort, we're going to really focus on the Ascend aspect. And so pumped to present this to you guys. So without further ado, I'm actually turning over to my compadre, Mr. Fred Byron, and let's learn a little bit about Ascend and how we're redefining migration and elevating those possibilities. Fred, it's all you, my friend. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, great. Thank you. Share my screen here. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. My name is Fred Byron. I'm a chief architect with Technologent, and great to have you here. I'm excited to walk you through something that we built specifically for this moment, a solution grounded in real-world VMware migration experience. If you've been thinking about your next move, this is going to hit close to home. We call it Ascend. It's not just another tool. It's a solution designed to make migrations faster, safer, and clearer. For everyone here, whether you're running the business or running the architecture. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why migrations go sideways, why these are systemic challenges and not team failures, and how Ascend turns a chaotic, high-risk process into a predictable, strategic advantage. Let's start with the pain, because if we're honest, we've all felt it. Migrations are brutal, let's just say it. I've seen projects that should have been 6 months turn into multi-year marathons, with spreadsheets flying, approvals stuck, and 3 a.m. calls because something broke that no one knew existed. The impact goes way beyond licenses or hardware. It's your team's time, your consultant's cost, and your opportunity cost. Projects that don't get done because your best people are buried in migration drama. Hidden dependencies are the landmines. You think you've mapped it all until the database goes dark at 3 a.m. And suddenly, you're coordinating on an all-hands, unplanned response that derails your entire week. Migrations today, they're slow, they're manual, they're expensive, and unpredictable. Average timeline, 10 to 48 months. One customer told us, we were 8 months in and we still didn't know what half of our systems were connected to. And that's why they're now planning on building their next migration plan with Ascend in the driver's seat. Anyone else have a story like that? Yeah, it's more common than we admit. Andrew, why don't you talk a little bit about the market and how this fits in?
Sure. Thank you, Fred. So specifically talking about Broadcom, right? And that's why everyone's on this webinar. So everyone probably knows this, but I'll just set the stage a little bit. So Broadcom acquires VMware right around November of 2023, and almost immediately starts raising costs 3x to 10x on customers while at the same time slashing the internal staff. I think when they first did the acquisition, they laid off something like 2,000 people. And then since then, we've seen thousands of more people fleeing from VMware. And it's the similar process that they did with Symantec and CA, where they're coming in, they're raising the prices dramatically and cutting their costs so that they can turn a faster profit, essentially. Fred? So this has been great for the Broadcom stock. Next slide. But it has been really, really terrible for the marketplace, right? So Susan Johnson, she famously sued them because they raised her something like 1,000% with 45-day notice. But even looking at all of our customers across the customer base, we're seeing nothing really but complaints. There was a recent survey conducted by Gartner of CIOs and IT leaders. Out of 220 people that responded, 0 said that they are having a good experience with Broadcom, either in the sales cycle or during the support. One notably saying that the support was abysmal. Next slide. So it's so bad that if you look at the research coming out of the analysts, Gartner suggests that 30% of VMware customers will be gone by 2028. And when we talk internally to VMware executives, the actual number that they're calculating is that 70% of their customers will migrate off 50% or more of their VMware workloads. So why are they doing this? Fred, next slide. Basically, Broadcom is betting that all the small customers that they have, a lot of them will just leave, but that the big enterprise customers won't be able to handle the complexity of the migration. And the reason why, next slide, is that, to Fred's point, these migrations are hard. No one really has a staff of people that know how to migrate large scale off of VMware. And on average, these projects are going to take somewhere between 18 to 48 months, and you're going to have to bring in outside expensive help to do it. Next slide. It's so challenging even that as Gartner suggests to people whether they should stay with VMware or explore an alternative technology, next slide, that the number one thing that you need to make sure is that you understand the ROI coming out of the migration. Will the juice be worth the squeeze? Will the migration be so complicated and expensive that it's just not worth doing? And so next slide, that's why we've built Ascend. So Fred, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about why we built it, what it is. I'll go into some of the details, and then we could take them into the platform.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andrew. So why did we build Ascend? First, let's take you behind the curtain. Ascend wasn't dreamed up in a vacuum. It's the product of hard-earned lessons and repeating patterns. We've been through these migration projects that start smooth and spiral at 3 a.m. Fire drills triggered by missed dependencies or last-minute surprises. This isn't about adding another point solution to your stack. It's about a shift in outcomes. Ascend represents a three-way partnership where Technologent brings migration expertise and project management, ReadyWorks provides orchestration and workflow automation, and Nutanix contributes proven migration technology. All these three components work together to give you complete migration control. The proven power of Nutanix Move, migration engine, the orchestration intelligence of ReadyWorks, and Technologent's battle-tested migration playbooks. In one past dry run using legacy tooling, a surprise dependency nearly derailed a key application. We built Ascend so it would surface these issues early. They had it then, they could have avoided the fire drill. So what keeps you up during a migration? Downtime, missed dependencies, explaining delays to your board? Ascend is designed to handle that stress point before it hits. So what is Ascend? Ascend is your command center. Everything you need to know about your workloads, connections, timelines, and risk, all in one place. It's a strategic view of your migration, not just a technical one. You see where things are going, what's at risk, and how fast you can move with confidence. Ascend combines Move from Nutanix, the engine that migrates your VM safely and efficiently, ReadyWorks platform, the intelligent orchestration layer that automates the workflows and is the glue, and then Technologent's expertise, real-world insights, and a proven process. A financial services team recently told us, we wish we had this when we started our migration. It would have cut 3 months off our planning and saved a lot of money and cost. That's what Ascend is built to do. Turn months of overhead into weeks of confidence. So let's shift to the migration paths. No two migrations are the same. Ascend respects that and adapts to whatever your strategy requires. Whether you're going with Nutanix AHV, AWS Bare Metal, or Azure, Ascend flexes with your direction, not the other way around. We support migrations from VMware to Hyper-V or Nutanix, AWS or Azure, cloud to cloud migrations, even shifts from Nutanix to Azure or AWS. In a hybrid migration scenario, Ascend can coordinate VMware to AHV moves for critical apps, while managing VMware to AWS for less latency sensitive workloads, all in one workflow. The org was juggling 3 migration tracks for this example. What they needed was Ascend built to provide unified coordination, less chaos, and clear direction. The customer told us, if we had had this earlier, we wouldn't have spent months untangling overlapping plans. It would have accelerated our project by at least 4 months. That's the power of migration clarity. So Andrew, let's talk about how the software actually works, and then we can jump into a demo.
That sounds good. Next slide. Okay, so Fred mentioned Nutanix Move. So those of you who are not familiar with it, Move is a migration tool built by Nutanix, and it's absolutely fantastic at moving virtual machines from one hypervisor to another. But if we think about these migrations and the fact that they take 18 months to 4 years, it's not moving the virtual machines over. That's the hardest part. It is a hard part, but it's all the other planning and logistics and modeling and execution that has to be done around that. And so that's what Ascend does. Fred, click it. So we think of Ascend really as 2 parts. The first part is helping to perform all the analysis you need to do of your VMware estate ahead of the VMware renewal. You want to know, do I need all of these virtual machines? What can I consolidate? What can I turn off? Then you want to understand, how do all the applications work on top of the virtual estate? How do they all interact with each other? Ultimately, so that you can figure out what has to be migrated together, how long it's going to take to migrate, and ultimately what it's going to cost. And then once you have that, within Ascend, we automate all of the logistics around that process, the emailing end users, surveys, self-service portals, collecting information from people, all of the wave creation and the wave planning, auditing, compliance, reporting, every single aspect of the migration, the stuff that takes a lot of time, that costs a lot of money, is fully automated on the platform so that you have an end-to-end migration solution from the moment you want to first start analyzing the estate all the way through until you are actually done with the migration. So next slide, Fred, let's show them how it works. So as I mentioned, the platform is used. It provides the ability to do one of 2 things. First, perform the analysis really before that renewal comes up, understand exactly what you have, be able to reliably tell leadership exactly what can be migrated before you have to even do the Broadcom renewal. And then once you're performing that migration, automate everything so that you know it's being done as quickly as possible. So next slide. So the way it works is Ascend drops into your environment and connects to all of the existing systems of record that you already have in place that you need to start figuring out how your estate works and how you're going to migrate it. We connect it to VMware and RV tools to understand the virtual estate, all of the infrastructure tools like Cisco or OpenManage or xClarity. Then we take all of the virtual machine information and the infrastructure information and we enrich it with information about the applications. Maybe it's in your ServiceNow CMDB, or it's in a portfolio management tool like AppDynamics or Dynatrace. Then there'll be some things that you might not know. And so we can pull in information from scanners, things like a Device 42, or we can integrate in spreadsheets that people have that are listing where different assets are sitting or application owners or how things work. Essentially, we can connect to any data source in the environment, ultimately trying to create this picture. Right? A full view of your estate that you can look at from the point of view of a user, of a business, of an application, of a piece of infrastructure, all the information that you need to know so that you can accurately start figuring out how to build wave plans and how to migrate over those virtual machines. The problem is, and we know this going into it, that your information and your data probably is not that great. Nobody has perfect data at all. And certainly nobody has it all in one place. So we know that. So what we're doing as we pull the data in from those various systems is we're scoring it for quality. Is it complete? Is it accurate? Is there mismatches between different systems? Are there gaps? Are there anomalies? So we use AI and we use algorithms to score the information coming in from all of those different places so that you can understand how reliable the information you're using to make these decisions is. And then we provide a lot of automation to start getting from that number 69 all the way up to next slide a much more acceptable number, say in the 90s or close to 100. And what we do is we're either reconciling information coming from different systems, or we're sending out essentially automated workshops, surveys that go out to stakeholders and application owners where they can fill in all the information that we might need to perform the migration. It could be information that's not even in any source system, like is this application going to be retired this year? Is it mission critical? Is it test? Is it prod? Are we sure about the different dependencies of it? Who's the application owner? All of the information that you need to collect, we can collect within this platform. Next slide, Fred. So ultimately, we'll get to a data score where we can now say to leadership, we're about 90% confident, or whatever your particular number is, in the data that we're pulling in. Next slide, Fred. So from there, then we can start making decisions using the information that's in the platform, right? Will my workload be compatible on my target system? Is it supported on Nutanix? Should this application be lift and shift moved, or should it be re-engineered and put into containers? How much hardware do I need to purchase? Ultimately, next slide, Fred. What we're trying to figure out is what can we migrate in advance of the renewal? Or if you have to renew for 1 year on Broadcom, what can we definitely migrate in that year? And what are the blockers that are preventing us from migrating more, so that we can try to get as much off of VMware as quickly as possible before we get into this 3x to 10x scenario on our renewal? Ultimately, next slide, Fred. What we want to be able to do is go to leadership and say, this is how long the migration is going to take, this is the timeline, and then this is what it's going to cost. Next slide, Fred. Once we have that, and then once the decision's been made to migrate, then within Ascend, because you have all of that data and because you're pulling in live information from all of those systems over the course of all of the years that it takes to perform the migration, as I said earlier, we are automating absolutely everything. The VMware migration, the hardware refresh, the scheduling, we're pushing the work down to the end users so they can migrate their own machines within the guardrails that we set. Essentially, every single aspect of an enterprise migration is fully automated on top of Ascend. Fred, you want to take it away, and then we'll go into the demo?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. So here's the Ascend advantage and the reality. Traditional migrations, they're messy, landmines, manual approvals, bottlenecks, timelines that double halfway through. That's cost, that's reputation. That's your roadmap getting pushed for another quarter. Ascend replaces that chaos with a single pane of glass, orchestrated workflows, and automation that keeps timelines tight. That's what you see on the right-hand side of the slide right now. You go from tracking dependencies in 10 different tools to seeing it all in one place, from duct taping workflows to letting automation do the heavy lifting. In early engagements, teams say this would have cut a timeline in half and saved us hundreds of thousands potentially in consulting fees. That's the shift lever that Ascend is built to deliver. So how does Ascend work? Here's the process. This isn't a spreadsheet shuffle. It's a structured 4-phase system built for predictability. With clear timelines and zero guesswork. We go through a discover and engage, automate, and optimize phase. In each one of these phases, we map your environment and dependencies. That's weeks, not months. Score and group workloads by risk, complexity, and business priority. Then we use ReadyWorks to sequence and execute the waves. Move handles the lift. We monitor post-migration performance, what went well, what needs refining. It's not a theory, it's repeatable, and it works. So what does Ascend deliver? Let's break it down. You have fewer delays, less risk, and more time for the stuff that actually grows your business. Our early customers see faster timelines in their tests and shaved off numbers in time overall. Setup that takes hours, not days, live inventory and updated dependency maps, wave planning built into the console, predictable timelines with early risk alerts, aligned workflows, business and tech moving together. That's the kind of momentum shift we're here for. Now we look at migration considerations. Let's talk about the critical systems. You don't get to mess this up. If SAP, ERP, or your patient systems go dark, you've got a business crisis, not an IT one. That's why Ascend builds in risk-adjusted plans, region or BU-specific schedules, and the ability to pivot fast. That's what we mean by flexibility. So here, we're ready for a live demo. You can see what Ascend delivers in visibility control and efficiency. We're going to pass the baton over to MJ to take over and show you what this looks like live in action.
Awesome. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. What I'm going to be taking us through today is a product demo showcasing a day in the life of this migration journey away from VMware. So, as Andrew and Fred mentioned, everything really begins with the data. So the Ascend platform ships with all the necessary connectors already pre-built to be able to capture all the source environment and VMware information, the target environment. In this specific scenario, we're using Nutanix Prism for our target. And then we also have a connector for Nutanix Move. Move is the appliance that we're using to actually do the lift and shift. And at some point in the workflow, we are integrating with Move to be able to create migration plans and actually cut over the bits and the bytes and the compute. So besides the VMware connector, which you see here, which gives us all of our source environment details, our target Prism connector, our middleware, which is going to help us facilitate the actual movement of the machines. We also have connections into a number of different infrastructure tools and systems to help us capture additional data and supplement our inventory. We've got a connector into every VMware engineer's favorite tool, RV Tools. We've also got ServiceNow from a CMDB perspective, but also from an ITSM perspective, where we're able to automatically create incidents and requests as part of a workflow as we migrate things, which we'll cover in a little bit. We've also got a ton of other connections to discovery tools, the Device 42s, the OneIQs, everything from Lenovo xClarity to all of the other standard known Active Directory, other inventory systems, databases, CSVs, really the ability to tap in and connect to any data that deemed necessary to be able to successfully execute this program. Establishing new connections is as easy as clicking the Activate New Connection button, and then depending on the connector, an easy form is presented where the operator fills in a number of inputs and fields and clicks Activate a New Connection. That begins our data flow. However, because of the number of different systems that we're connecting to, that data may or may not be complete, or there may be other issues with that data. So the next thing we want to do is we want to start to score that data around confidence. Specifically here, what we're looking at is our completeness score for our source data in our VMware environment. So we're able to first and foremost pull in all of the data, but then wrap logic and scoring around that data for source, target, or any other data set, and be able to apply a score against where are we, what's the completeness, what's the correctness of that data, and a number of different mechanisms that we can apply. But specifically here, we're looking at our source environment and a number of different data points that may be missing values or data that we deemed needed and required to successfully execute this. So once we get our initial score, expectation is that will never be 100% from day one, but through additional connections, but also the ability to reach out to stakeholders and end users by way of surveys and automatically capturing additional data that may not exist in some system of record directly from stakeholders to ultimately drive this score to a much higher acceptable number where confidence around the data and our starting point starts to be realized. So first, we're capturing the data, and then we're scoring it and building out additional connections or establishing additional connections and backfilling any data that still is left to be captured or may be or is deemed needed or required.
MJ, can I jump in 1 second?
Absolutely, Andrew.
Great. So I just wanted to point out to everyone that as Mike shows us the data that we're collecting, it's not just information about, say, the OS or the memory or power stats, but it's also some of that soft information that you need in order to perform and plan these migrations. Do we know the applications? Who is the app owner? Do we know the application leasing information? Has the app owner validated that they want to migrate this onto Nutanix? Do we know who owns the infrastructure, blackout dates, patching schedules, all the type of information that PMs will need to collect in order to properly plan a multi-year migration? We are analyzing all of that here, so that we can really clearly state exactly what we know and what we don't know, so that we know that when we're making a recommendation to leadership about renewing or not renewing, that we have a solid base of understanding of the quality of the data that is making those decisions. Thanks, Mike.
Yep, great call out, Andrew. All right, awesome. So now that we've got data coming in, we're scoring it, we have confidence around that data. That leads us to, ends up with a normalized, rationalized inventory of our source and target environment. So just as an example here, we're looking at our source VMware inventory, where we're capturing everything from operating system, hardware information, network information, power state, UUIDs, all the necessary information that we need to be able to plan and execute this program. So now that we've got source data coming in, we have confidence around that data, it's rationalized and normalized. Now we have to look at organization. So when we think about a VMware migration, no customer or no organization is going to just take hundreds or thousands of VMs and blindly cut them over. We need to organize these virtual machines into logical groupings, specifically and more than likely around workloads. So virtual machines are not just isolated, compute resources that are sitting there. They're usually providing some role, some service, or some function for a line of business or some workload in the organization. So through the connection and app data and being able to harvest things like app dynamics and other systems to be able to get relationships around applications, we're able to render this relationship mapping. So what we're looking at here is an example workload called HR App 1 at the very top here. And through the data relationships, we're able to decipher that that workload has a footprint already in both the VMware environment, which is our source, but also has a footprint in Nutanix. So let's walk through the rest of these layers. So then on the VMware side, we see that this workload has 2 virtual machines in the dev environment. And then we see on the Nutanix side, also in the dev environment, we've got 2 representative virtual machines. So just from this diagram, we're able to decipher that more than likely the dev environment of HR App 1 has already been cut over and migrated over to Nutanix. However, we still have the prod environment with these 3 virtual machines. Now, there's a little gotcha on this one virtual machine. We can see there's an extra delimiter here on the number, which means it's actually associated or related to another line of business application or another workload. So let's see what that looks like here. So this one virtual machine, which is part of the prod environment for HR App 1, also provides some role or function for another workload that we're calling LOB App 1. That workload also has a footprint in VMware. We can tell just from that one virtual machine. But in the prod environment of this workload, LOB App 1, we also have these 3 other virtual machines. So now as we're planning out the migration or the cutover of this HR App prod workload with these 3 virtual machines, we have to combine and bundle in the workload LOB App 1 with these additional 3 virtual machines. Why? Because of this one shared virtual machine. This could be a database, this could be a web server, some shared function that both workloads are using. And in order for us to successfully plan out, eliminate risk, and not disjoin any services, we want to look at migrating these 2 workloads together when it comes to the prod environment. Awesome. So now we've got data, we've got confidence, we've got groupings and relationships around our source and target environment. Now what we're going to look at is the next step is kind of looking at, planning out and executing this migration. So we're going to take a look at our candidate readiness and selection functionality. So what we're looking at here is, again, our source inventory of our virtual machines in VMware. But then in addition to that, we're now able to apply logic to each virtual machine to determine its readiness to be cut over or migrated or scheduled for a migration. So operators have the ability to build out what we're looking at here with these red, amber, and green statuses, readiness gates. And this could be one, many, dozens, as many as a customer or an enterprise might need to deem a virtual machine ready for cutover. Now, to Andrew's point earlier around the relationship, around the scoring of the data, a readiness gate doesn't necessarily mean hardware readiness, doesn't necessarily mean software readiness. A readiness gate can also be some of these other human checks around, did we get app owner sign off? And again, through our surveying capabilities, we can distribute surveys to app owners and stakeholders and automatically capture this information. But what we're trying to end up with here in our readiness selection capability is a set of gates that we want to a VM to be compliant against in order for that VM to be ready. So once we've defined those gates, and again, this could be a workshop, sitting down with stakeholders in the enterprise, looking at the workloads and what does it actually mean for something to be cut over. A change request needs to be submitted. Firewall requests need to be submitted on the target side. We need to notify the end users of the workload that there might be potential downtime or some transition period or something that they need to be aware of. We want to communicate with other SMEs. Each one of those 4 steps that I just described could be one of these readiness gates that we're toggling here to determine this virtual machine has gone through all of these conditions and it is absolutely ready to be scheduled and to be cut over. So now, once we have a subset of machines, and also, upon day 1 of the installation, once the data is tapped, there are predefined readiness gates here, like large VM. Any virtual machine that's larger than 5 terabytes is automatically going to get flagged as not ready, just based on its size, where we might want some exception workflow around large VMs or maybe some additional planning. Operating system status, the source environment, which is the second column. The source environment may have certain guest operating systems that are quite old, that are legacy, by some means. The target hypervisor that we're migrating to may not support those guest OSs that are legacy on the new target hypervisor. So we're able to look at the source inventory of VMs, look at their operating systems and versions, and be able to marry that up to compatibility information on Nutanix target hypervisor and automatically flag any guest OS that's not supported, that's sitting on a particular VM as not ready through this same mechanism. But what we end up with here is a subset of machines that are deemed ready by all of the readiness gates that have been established. So we're going to highlight those, and we're going to drop these machines into our migration wave. Now, a migration wave, the best way to think about it is basically a grouping of virtual machines that we're going to apply a workflow against. Specifically here, that workflow is going to be cutting over those virtual machines from VMware to Prism using the Nutanix Move product. So now that we've populated some waves with virtual machines, and again, a wave is a grouping of virtual machines that we are scheduling for a workflow, and that workflow is the cutting over with Nutanix Move. However, now we're able to land on our command and control dashboard and really start to monitor and keep tabs on that wave and the progression of those migrations. So first and foremost, I want to draw your attention to this chart here. So as we populate these waves, we're able to see on a per wave basis just a total number of virtual machines that have been put into that wave. So we can see that breakdown, but then as we start to categorize and apply different labels to our virtual machines, such as this is a critical virtual machine, an important, some classification or some tag that we want to apply, we can start to break out these totals based on those tags. So out of the 15 virtual machines in our first wave, 5 are critical, 2 are important, or any delineation that we may want to show on this chart here. We can also apply thresholds. Once a wave reaches more than X number of virtual machines, that bar will automatically show as red or amber as opposed to green. So some logic around thresholds can be applied right to these charts. But now that we have a breakdown of how many virtual machines we have in each wave, we can start to look at the capacity of each wave. So capacity from a disk perspective. At the end of the day, during cutover, we're going to be transferring a significant number of terabytes over the network. The source, there's potential impact to the source network, there's potential impact to the target network, and everything in between. So based on that wave breakout of virtual machines, we then start to calculate what is the total number of terabytes by looking at all the disks in all the virtual machines in each wave and summing that up as a wave total. So here we're seeing that breakdown of each wave per number of terabytes in it. So our largest wave kind of happening in August of 2025 has close to 44 terabytes of data across those 19 virtual machines. So now again, this is important because of that impact to network, especially as we look at running concurrent waves, things happening in parallel. We want to make sure that we're not going to overload the network and that there's capacity on the network for us to be able to do these data transfers. So now, welcome our network transfer estimation tool. So based on this breakout of how much terabytes or how many terabytes we're looking to ultimately transfer over the network based on the underlying virtual machines that are in that wave, we're then able to allow customers to start to make estimations and assumptions around how long that's going to take. So first and foremost, they can select the interface speed of the network. So let's assume the best optimal speed there at 100 gigabit per second, and then with minimal overhead. So under these ideal network conditions, to transfer 44 terabytes of data is going to take about an hour. But as network conditions start to degrade, and we're on a much slower link with a lot of overhead, that same wave is going to take about 8 hours to transfer. Now that impacts planning, communications, potential downtime, and a host of other things. But ultimately, we're able to give the customer the ability to make these estimations and look at the impact of source and target around what each wave is actually going to transfer. Then let's look at now things are starting to progress. So our workflows are kicking off. We are integrating and automatically plugging in with the Move appliance. We're creating migration plans based on the source VMs and the breakout of those VMs in each wave. And then we're keeping tabs of that cutover that the Move product is doing, and we're capturing the successes and the failures. So here we see a breakdown of that progression of each wave. So our first wave here, out of the 9 virtual machines that were scheduled and in that wave, 4 have successfully cut over, 2 have failed. So let's talk about what happens in these scenarios. So with the failures, there's ability to roll back. So that's one option. Other options, if there's a detected failure, and there's a number of ways that we detect failures, but upon detected failures, we can automatically integrate with ServiceNow and open up a ServiceNow incident, which then gets routed to the appropriate team for any remediation or any additional insights that may need to be captured. So we have some options around failures. Successes, those are pretty straightforward. We have a successful cutover. Then we can also, through the workflow, invite users to do workload testing and validation and stakeholders, and be able to communicate with those stakeholders that we have a successful cutover. Please perform the following steps. in addition to, being able to track the successes and, communicating with stakeholders, there's now an entire potential other workflow for decommissioning that VMware environment. So as we start to stand up, the virtual machines in our new hypervisor, we want to start to decommission that legacy environment and start to reclaim those licenses. And we'll show something around licensing in just a little bit. But leveraging the same mechanisms and capabilities that we just went over around workflow, communications, we can then leverage Ascend to actually manage an entire decommissioning cycle of that legacy environment. So as VMs start to cut over and they are successfully migrated, we can then put those VMs through a decommissioning workflow and start to keep track of and monitor that entire decom process. So just as an example here, we can see that we are tracking, any migrated or cut over VM. And in my lab here, I've got 6. Out of those 6 migrated VMs, 2 are ready for decommissioning and 4 have already been decommissioned. Now, again, the decommissioning process could be a power off, a destroy, notifications, ServiceNow requests for someone to do something, ultimately take down a rack and maybe even do something in a data center. That entire life cycle of decommissioning the VMware environment can be managed and put through similar capability and workflow to manage it all through one pane of glass, which is Ascend. Now, when it comes to licensing and why we would want to take advantage of Ascend for that decommissioning process is one of the data points that we're capturing is license information out of each ESX host from VMware. So then we have a report where we're able to show that license detail from VMware around usage and capacity, but then you can go in and put in some estimated costs behind those licenses, and Ascend will automatically start to calculate savings and dollar implications behind decommissioning and reclaiming those VMware licenses out of the environment. Now, in addition to that, as things start to get scheduled and, as you're looking at migrating multiple workflows over, the lifetime of the project, there's a number of different tools like Gantt charts that will show us each wave, how things stack up on the schedule, the progression of each wave, and being able to look at this entire program holistically over its entire time frame, whether it's 12, 18, or 24 months or sooner, if we can help it. In addition to that, we've got a number of different calendar tools, but most importantly, the entire Ascend platform and the ReadyWorks platform has a full BI module where we can do a ton of dashboard reporting and reports. So whether it's Ascend, where all of the reporting through a number of different charts and report capabilities all built on the front end, easy, intuitive functionality to be able to take any data point from that we've captured, whether it's from the source or target inventory or any of the workflow data, and being able to apply it to reports and dashboards for, with various views for different stakeholders and project, project owners that might want different views of that data. And we'll leave it here from a demo perspective. Thank you, everybody, for participating and giving us the opportunity to kind of show you in platform what this journey looks like. And we'll pause it here from a demo perspective and turn it over for question and answers.
Thanks, Mike. Great job per usual, man. Always love your demos. They're beyond informative, so appreciate that. We did have some questions for the team, and so I'll throw this out to the panel. The first question was, how long does it take to stand up the solution, and what does onboarding look like?
I'll take that, Trent. This is Andrew. So standing up the solution is really as fast as we can gain access to the source systems of data. So in most enterprises, it's typically up in a few weeks where you're getting the initial reports. And then to actually understand what the migration will entail, in parallel to standing up Ascend, the Technologent team is going to workshop with your group, understand what your likely migration path is, and use the data that's available in Ascend to kind of make those decisions. So Trent, I'd say a safe number in an enterprise is about 4 weeks. And it could be done quicker than that. Most people do it, but put it in quickly ahead of the VMware conversation around the renewal of the license.
Awesome. Andrew, I had another question. It's probably going to come to you as well. Is this hosted in the cloud or is it on-prem?
So we support both. It's the same code base, whether it's being used in the cloud or on-prem. Most enterprise customers tend to like to put it on-prem or in their private cloud for security reasons, but we can support both models.
Awesome. All right. One more question for y'all.
I got it.
So from this particular person, we use different tools than the ones I saw listed. Is it accurate to assume that Ascend can pull data from any system, even ones we have built in-house?
That is an accurate statement. So Ascend can connect to any data source or any source system. So if you have a homegrown asset management system, or if you're using some other type of application portfolio management tool, it doesn't matter to us. We can hook into anything that has an API or through XML, CSV, flat files. We have never found anything that we can't connect to. So we can connect to any source system in your environment, normalize that data, and then use it to inform the migration planning and the migration execution.
Nice. Yeah, so very flexible, which brings us to our next webinar. We'll talk about that later.
Great layup, Trent.
You like that? Awesome. Well, speaking of that, let's talk next steps. So the team covered a ton today, but I invite you to continue the conversation with us. So let's discuss what a demo and a POC looks like for your environment. Let's book time with our experts and talk about how Ascend has changed the migration world as we know it by reducing migration risks and costs with proven automation. So we're here to help you make what can be an uncomfortable journey comfortable. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out. Fred, if you go to the next slide, please. And with that, thank you to our guests of honor, Fred, Andrew, Mike, for your valuable insights. And thank you to all that were able to attend today. We definitely appreciate you all spending some time with us. And we look forward to walking this journey with you to redefine migration possibilities. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out and have a great rest of your week. Stay safe and healthy, and God bless.
Thank you, Trent.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers.